fun. Hey, folks. Welcome to WP Roundtable, episode 166. My name is Kyle Maurer, coming to you from Jackson, Michigan, talking about WordPress stuff with my good friend, Scott DeLuzio. How you doing, Scott?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show to talk about your story and all the cool stuff that you're up to. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, here we are, episode 166. We've got a great guest. Getting a little bit of echo, Scott, still, but let's start by chatting about our quick picks of the week. And for mine, I just want to share real quick that on my other podcast, we just had our 50th episode, which was pretty fun. The Get Options podcast. If you look it up on iTunes or go to getoptionspodcast.com, you can learn about this other show that I do that's just basically an advice show. I co-host with my friend Adam Silver, and we try and tackle life problems, WordPress problems, business problems, and give it a bit of a satirical twist oftentimes, sometimes with the occasional poem or joke comedy song or challenging games that we play with each other. It's kind of just a fun, not so serious take on advice for dealing with the issues we all have in WordPress. So check out our 50th episode on iTunes. And that's kind of my self-serving pick of the week, which I don't like to usually do, but I'm proud of the milestone. So there. Scott, what have you got to share?
I mean, it's your show, so you know it's not a problem to have that kind of shameless plug in there.
Yes.
So
thanks for the vindication.
Yeah, so I've actually just started listening to a podcast, Hooked on Products. It's a relatively new podcast that I just kind of came across not too long ago. I think they only have maybe 8 or 9 episodes at this point. But it's Phil Dirksen and John Turner. They've kind of come together and they're talking about basically the product space in WordPress, building plugins and themes and things like that, and selling them. They're talking about the product side, the business side of that type of stuff, which to me was kind of a cool perspective, cool show to kind of tune into. Still kind of new. I'm sure they're probably looking for guests. So if you're in that space, I'm sure you can reach out. They wouldn't be opposed to getting more guests on their show too. So cool show. Hooked on Products.
Hooked on Products. I like it. That sounds pretty cool. And I've met Phil before, but I don't know that I've been acquainted with the other co-host. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah.
All right. Scott, let's learn a little bit more about your background. I want to understand kind of where you came from, where you got started. Let's take a step back and I'm still echoing just a little bit. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Maybe I could turn my volume down or something.
I'm going to turn my volume down a bit for you.
All righty. So I want to take us back a little before your career was really on track or had progressed very much at all. I know you have a military background. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit, but like, what was your vision when you were young Scott DeLuzio and said, that I want to do something with my life. I've got an idea. I think I know the path that I'm going to start walking down. Take us to that point in life and what that vision was.
Yeah, I think that vision has changed so many times over the years that I don't even know exactly where I started off at, but
sure.
I'll take you back to kind of maybe my college days. I was in college as learning to be an accountant. So I have an accounting degree. While I was in college, I had no real marketable skills, but my dad was starting a consulting business at the time, and I wanted to help him out with something. I didn't know what I really could do, but I said, what is there that I can do to help you with? And he said, well, I need a website, so build me a website. And I said, well, I don't know how to do that. I didn't know where to get a domain name. I didn't know where to get hosting. I didn't know any of anything that went into it. So he said, go buy a book and figure it out. And so I did. I bought a basic HTML book and went through all the steps on how to build a basic HTML web page, and went through and I built him a website. And it, by today's standards, it was kind of pretty much crap. But by those standards, I went from basically a blank page to having something that was usable. You know, you could click the buttons and they worked, and they took you to the page that it actually wanted to go to or whatever. So I was pretty excited about that. And I think that kind of planted the seed for me for future website type work. And over the years, so I worked in accounting and finance over the years. During that time, I joined the Connecticut Army National Guard. This was in a post 9/11 world. I had always wanted to serve in the military, and I also had, you know, my other career going on, so I was trying to look for a way to do the best of both worlds kind of thing. So the National Guard provided me with that opportunity with training 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year kind of thing. Eventually, I did get deployed to Afghanistan for better part of a year. And when I got back from there, I was still working in, you know, kind of the corporate world, and just wasn't appealing to me anymore. It wasn't the type of lifestyle I wanted to live. It wasn't the type of job I wanted to do. And so I kind of went back to some of the website stuff I had learned years ago, and I had somewhat kept up with it with, you know, personal blogs and, you know, different things like that as a user, not as a creator of plugins or anything like that. And so I went back and I kind of brushed off some of the old textbooks that I had on web development, HTML and PHP stuff that I had used. And I started kind of getting more involved with it. And now that there were a lot more online tutorials and stuff, I was kind of teaching myself a little bit more about how to, you know, change certain things on web pages and whatever using PHP, and modify the WordPress, you know, how WordPress works out of the box by using plugins and stuff like that. So I knew that I still had that seed planted from all those years ago when I built my dad's first website. And I figured if it has lasted all these years, I'm probably onto something. This is probably something I'm going to be interested in and actually want to learn more about and do more with. So I did. I kind of dove in and I started learning a lot more about it, and basically made it my job eventually. You know, I started doing client work. I was doing building websites for clients, and doing that kind of stuff. It was mostly local businesses, and eventually I came to not enjoy that part of it so much because the clients that I was working with, a lot of them, sometimes they didn't know really what they wanted, and I wasn't really much of a designer. Like I could take an existing theme that was out there and I could make some tweaks to it and kind of fit it to the way they wanted it. But if they were just like, build me something pretty, I wasn't that guy, and I was getting a lot of that, and it was draining on me, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing. But during that time, I was also building plugins. A lot of them were scratching my own itch kind of plugins, and I said, well, I can't be the only person who wants this type of plugin, so let me try selling them. And they actually started selling with very little marketing efforts, and I wasn't going to retire off of it or anything like that, but I realized that if I actually spent some more time on marketing these and listening to the customer, getting some feedback and improving them, that maybe I can make this my full-time job, and kind of drop the client work. And about a year and a half ago or so, I finally decided I wasn't going to take on any more clients. I was just going to do plugin work full-time, and that's basically where I've been for the last year and a half or so. And here we are.
That's amazing, Scott. Yeah, a pretty cool story that you were able to just make it happen. Give us the rundown on the plugins that are in your catalog right now.
Yeah, so WP1099 is one of them. It's kind of a seasonal plugin, which is kind of a weird thing in the plugin world that something would be seasonal. But
Sure.
it's a tax-related plugin, so it's really only necessary kind of at the end or beginning of the year, whichever way you want to look at it, when you might be filing a 1099 form for either like if you have affiliates if you're selling products on your site and you have affiliates that are promoting those products, or if you have like a multi-vendor marketplace where you have kind of like a theme forest kind of thing where you have a lot of vendors all selling in one place. Those vendors or affiliates at the end of the year, if they've earned over a certain amount of money, they are supposed to be getting a 1099 from whatever the business is there. And one of the things that I notice is that none of the affiliate or vendor plugins that are out there make it easy to figure out which vendor or which affiliate is supposed to get a 1099 at the end of the year. None of them really aggregate the dollar amounts well, and they don't make it easy to kind of export that information in a usable format for tax purposes. And so I made WP1099 to basically solve that problem. It's kind of a one-click thing where at the end of the year, you just click the button and it spits out an export of all the vendors or affiliates that are supposed to get a 1099 with the dollar amounts that are in the right section of the 1099 and all that kind of stuff. So it's basically a way to kind of help businesses not have to sit there with a calculator and figure out how much money each affiliate or vendor earned during the year. Just recently, I also acquired another plugin called Full Screen Background Images from Pippin Williamson, and he started that about I want to say 7 or 8 years ago. And so I acquired that plugin about almost exactly 2 months ago now. And so I've been working on that, trying to make some improvements. Some of the features that have been requested over the years that just haven't kind of gotten added into that. WP CRM system is another plugin that I do. It's basically a CRM that's baked inside of WordPress. All of your contacts and all your all the CRM type data that you would have is going to be living on your own website as opposed to some third-party CRM website. And the final plugin that I've been working on is called Conditional Checkout Fields, which it works with WooCommerce or Easy Digital Downloads, and basically allows you to add additional fields to the checkout page based on the products that are in the customer's cart. So it makes it easy for you to collect extra information if you need it for a certain product that someone might be purchasing.
Well, it's a pretty good catalog of sweet products, man. I'm interested in kind of learning a little more about each of them, but I want to know, like you said, things have been going well. You've been full-time, just plugins, no clients for about 1.5 years, I think is right.
Yeah.
That's some exciting stuff. Hats off for you being able to do that. Has business grown as expected?
Yeah. So I guess when I first started, I didn't really know what to expect. I obviously I had some sales history with these plugins, but like I said, I really wasn't marketing them too much. There was a website out there that was selling them. I didn't go and optimize it, keywords. I wasn't tracking everything. I just basically put it out there with the Field of Dreams approach. If you build it, they will come. And obviously that isn't the way to do it for anything. But I just put it out there, and at the time I had other clients I was working on. So if I made a little bit of money on it, that was just kind of icing on the cake, and that was fine. But now it kind of became my full time. This is where my money is coming from, and so I kind of have to pay a little bit more attention to it. So I kind of been diving in a whole lot more on making sure that everything is optimized as much as it can be. Things are loading quickly, the keywords and all that kind of stuff, looking at the sales copy and everything like that, and going through basically all of my materials that are out there, documenting. That was something I never really considered before, was having a documentation on anything was on my website or anything like that. So I'd always get customers asking the same questions over and over again, and finally the light bulb went off and said, well, why don't you just put a document out there that says this is how you do X, Y, or Z, and then the support requests just basically go away, and sure enough they did. So it's just a matter of going through the process and identifying the things that you need to do to improve over time. So
Right.
So yeah, it's been a journey.
I'm sure it has been. Have you hit any like surprising roadblocks, just like issues along the way in the past year and a half, like to try and just make this a legitimate business that sustains you and your family and grow? I mean, next question after this might be how where you want it to grow to, but like, have you hit any like big walls that you didn't really see coming, that slowed down your growth, maybe made you a little nervous about your progress? Just any problems along the way?
Yeah, so I've had the last gosh, I don't know, I don't even know how long, but last little while now, I've been um, I've been toying with the idea of bringing on additional help, to other developers and things like that to help me with some of the workload. It's really my own time constraint that is kind of an issue, where before I would take on a client knowing that yes, I have the amount of time to do this project in whatever their deadline. If they need it in the next 6 weeks, okay, do I have that time available? And if I do, then yes, I can take it on and I can work on that particular project. But not that I necessarily have time constraints with the plugin work that I have now. It's not like I need to have something done by the end of the month or whatever. But there's other things that go into running a business that take my time. And so if I can offload some of the development work or some of the support work, even, stuff like that, that will free my time up to be able to focus on more of the business side of it and some of the marketing stuff and things like that. So, for a little while now, I've been kind of toying around with the idea of bringing on other developers and kind of playing around with how that might work out. So something I hadn't really considered, when I first, a year and a half ago, when I first started this, I just figured this would be something that I would be doing and I wouldn't need any extra help. But at some point, you kind of need to rely on some other people and branch out and offload some of that work.
Is that more in the, I mean, there's a number of reasons you might be wanting to do that. You could just be like realizing that sustaining your current scale is more than you can handle. You could be also realizing that maybe you're doing things that you don't love and want to shift your attention to things you're more passionate about or aspects of the business you're more passionate about. That's also very common. You could also be in a situation where you want to grow a little bit, scale the business up, and you know that that's the only way to do that. Any of those three or some other feel like the main driver for more people in the mix?
Yeah, so a couple months ago, my family and I went on a vacation. We were on a cruise, actually, and one of the things I kind of was kicking myself for packing was my laptop, and I was bringing my laptop with me, and I was like, am I actually? I spent all this money on a cruise. I'm going out to all these like nice places, and I'm going to be bring my laptop because what if the sky falls down and all of a sudden I have dozens of angry customers who are like, this isn't working, and you need to fix this, and it's just me. If I'm not there, no one else is going to respond to any of this stuff, and no one's going to be able to help them. So it kind of falls on me. So I have to bring it. I don't really have any other option. And I said to myself, like, is that really a place I want to be, where I am always, no matter where I am or what I'm doing, I always have to kind of be on call, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm not going to be here for a couple of days. Can you guys kind of, just check in on things and make sure that, if, the earth is, blowing up, that we have someone here who can kind of, manage things and not make sure that customers aren't angry, they're being taken care of and stuff like that. So I can take, a couple days here and there to go spend time with my family, to go travel and do things that I actually enjoy doing. But it's also another thing that you had mentioned was, scaling the business. Eventually I want to grow the business. I want to have a larger customer base than I have. I want to, just basically grow the business. And I'm not going to be able to do that all on my own necessarily. I can probably get it to a certain point. But then I think it's going to just be too much for any one person to handle. And so in order to do that, I feel like I'm going to need to bring somebody on, probably sooner than later.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite things that you get to do day to day?
Well, I mean, the day-to-day stuff, I still love starting with a blank screen and creating something and making something work, and I think that goes back to that seed that was planted years ago when I was working on my dad's site for his business. But I like kind of seeing a problem that either maybe one of my customers is having or that I'm having or something, um, and just building a solution to that problem and getting it to a point where it's now a functioning, solution as opposed to just sitting like, well, gee, I don't know what the answer is, and just throwing my hands up in the air. I like to be able to see those things come to life.
And you've now been doing this for a while. You should probably have a pretty good idea of what parts of your job, your responsibilities, you don't particularly look forward to. The tasks that pile up, you kind of dread. What's that stuff?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you one thing. I mean, it's not necessarily that I dread it. It's just I don't think I'm that great at it. It's the marketing side of things, where, well, I don't know if marketing is really the right term for it, but knowing how to talk to my customers, speak in their language. I went through some of my websites that I do the selling on, and I noticed a lot of it was kind of technical talk, like the plugin does this and that and whatever, and it's very techie speak.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times the customer is not the techie person, and so when I was looking through that, I was like, well, I mean, it's no wonder that people don't necessarily fall in love with the solution, because I don't necessarily know what the solution even is, because it might be the perfect solution for them, but it's hard to follow along with when you're reading the techie speak or whatever. So doing that is kind of a hard thing for me, and I've actually started working with someone to come and edit some of my work to make it more user friendly to read, as opposed to developer focused or whatever. So so I've been working on that. So that was one of the outsourcing things that I've kind of slowly trickled into, but I'm going to be doing more of that in the next coming months.
So smart. Yeah, know your limits and where your skills are. What about you've got 4 different products. How successful have you been at like creating overlap between the products and cross-selling to your customers?
Yeah, that's, I think, a kind of a problem with the plugins that I have is there's not much overlap between them. Like I know, like with you guys with EDD and Affiliate WP, like there's a ton of overlap. When you have a site that sells things, and then you might want people who have, or to have an affiliate relationship with
sure.
the people who sell
That's a good
things.
example.
Like, there's a ton of overlap with that, and that's like a perfect solution. And so, like, I don't have that, which I guess is kind of like the long way of
have you tried? Is this something you've been playing with, trying to figure out a way?
I kind of toyed around with some of the ideas, and I think part of the problem is, like, I'm just going to use one of them for example, like the conditional checkout fields plugin that works with WooCommerce and Easy Digital Downloads. That it's specific towards like the e-commerce stuff, whereas the like the CRM that I have, the WP CRM system, it can collect data from Easy Digital Downloads and WooCommerce, like as an order is coming in, it can create a new contact in your CRM. But there's not much overlap with all of that, because not everybody who uses a CRM necessarily is selling physical or even digital products online.
Sure.
And I kind of went through all of the products I'm selling, and I'm trying to make a connection of some sort between them, and it's hard. They're so different in terms of who the target audience is and stuff that I think that's kind of an issue that I kind of need to work through to see if there are any opportunities. Maybe there's ways that I can integrate certain plugins with each other or whatever. But as far as finding common ground with the target market, that's something I struggle with.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it. It's tough. You said it well and explained the situation, which doesn't surprise me given the nature of the four products that you have, and I've seen it before. This is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's the case, with our business as well, where as you have been involved with, Pippin's actively unloading things that are not truly complementary to where our core business is. They're just other things. Maybe they're fine, maybe they're great, maybe they make money, but they're not like really serving the same base of customers and complementing where our energies are most focused. And so we're well aware of how much of a struggle it can be to try and serve multiple audiences. And I'd be curious, like, what your ideas are, or like what some of your plans are for trying to create like a more homogeneous user or customer base.
I've toyed around with the idea of having like one umbrella company that sells all the products that I have,
because they're all on their own sites right now.
They're all on their own sites right now.
Yeah.
And I toyed around with that idea of just having like the one site that sells all of them, but they're just so different that I think it would be more confusing than anything to put them all on their own or all on one site, as opposed to keeping them on their own separate sites. It might be a little more unifying in terms of, okay, where are these things coming from? Do we know, who the developer is, and, do we trust them and things like that? But I feel like they're just too different of a product that I think ultimately it would be more confusing that way.
Sure.
So for now, anyways, I'm keeping them on their own sites.
Well, thankfully you have an accounting background, so somewhat of even if it were a convoluted setup, you're like up to the task of managing your finances.
Yeah, I mean the finances is something that I fortunately don't have to outsource quite yet, because I kind of have a good handle on what's going on with that. But there are changes, changes in the tax law and stuff like that I may not necessarily keep up with, because it's not my day-to-day job anymore. Where when I was doing taxes on a regular basis for clients and stuff, that was something I had to keep up with all the time, because that was basically my job. But that's not necessarily my job anymore. So I do my own taxes, so I keep up with it enough so that I'm able to file them correctly, but I'm not necessarily keeping up with all the edge cases that might be out there that I otherwise would have been keeping up with.
Which plugin do you think has the most exciting opportunities for growth that you're just like really stoked about investing in?
Yeah, I think kind of two of them right now. The full screen background images that I just acquired from Pippin, I think has a ton of opportunity for growth. It has a pretty large active user base on the free version that's on WordPress.org right now. I think it's like 20,000 active users, and so tapping into that user base would be huge. Even a small percentage of that would be nice to tap into. But the WP CRM system, I feel, has a lot of opportunity as well, especially with automating tasks and things like that, where your typical third-party CRM that lives on some other website or app or other service, they're not really easy to integrate with your own website. So with WP CRM system, we integrate with Gravity Forms and Ninja Forms and other WordPress plugins, as well as third-party apps through like Zapier or things like that. And so it helps to automate a lot of the things that you normally would have to do manually. So if you were on some third-party CRM, someone would fill out your contact form, and you're like, oh, I need to add this person to my CRM database. You'd probably end up copying and pasting their name and their email address and their phone number and all that kind of stuff into the CRM. Whereas with my CRM, their stuff is, all their contact information is automatically added as soon as they hit submit on the contact form. And so it will kind of streamline the workflow of the business who's using it. And I think stuff like that, anything that can help save a few hours a week or whatever for a business is something that's ultimately going to be useful. So I think that one has some potential to grow, over time. So that one I've been doing a lot more work on to focus on the automation standpoints that it has.
Each of these, I know that you said full screen background images has a free version. Are they all otherwise monetized the same way, just like a straight pro version?
Yeah, they all have like a freemium aspect to it. So there's a free version on WordPress.org for all of the plugins, except for WP1099. That's the only one that doesn't have a free light version because, well,
or the conditional success redirects.
Yeah,
that's all of the EDD and WooCommerce, which are free.
Yeah, so all of the other ones have, they do have a free version. The WP CRM system is the only one that has an add-on model that I would kind of equate it to like affiliate WP, where you have like packages of like the lower, I don't want to say lower, but the less expensive tier package where you get kind of the basic add-ons, and then the higher tier packages where you get kind of the full-blown deal. You get access to all of the add-ons. So, but it's also a free plugin that's on WordPress.org. So if you want to use it just as is without any of the add-ons, you certainly can do that as well.
Right. Yeah, super cool. That's interesting. And so you made 3 and have acquired 1. And like where, I'm curious about like how you divide up your development time. Like where's that going? Do you like take turns tackling each one? Is there any one that is like the hungry monster that eats up all your dev time right now?
Yeah, I like to basically just make a list of like features as feature requests come in from clients or customers or whatever. I'll put them in a list. And actually, I just got turned on to this. This could have been one of my quick picks earlier, but I got turned on to this thing called Workflowy, and apparently it's been around for a long time, like 2010. It's been around for like 7 or 8 years now, and I just found out about it a couple weeks ago, and I kind of feel a little bit left out on this. But basically, it's a way to make a list, and it seems super simple, like what it is. It's basically just like an unordered list of bullet points of different tasks, and then you can kind of just like check it off as being completed, and it kind of like either crosses it out or hides it from your list or whatever, and you can collapse the lists and things like that. So it's basically just a way for you to do a brain dump of different things that you want to do, just to keep track of them, and then so that way I'm not hunting around my desk for little scratch pieces of paper when I had this random idea of, hey, I want to do this or whatever. So I kind of will go to this list on Workflowy and kind of just look to see what some of the high level items are that I can pick off, and I just start kind of plugging away on some of them and see what kind of interests me that day, and I'll start working on it. If there's any bugs or things like that are more urgent, obviously that'll take precedence over anything else that's on the list. But I try to squash those before they become an issue, like a major issue. But every now and again, a customer will say, "Hey, something doesn't seem to be working quite right," and so I'll work on that. And so I would say my development time is not probably as well structured as it should be. Like I don't really prioritize the features very well. I just kind of I'll take a look at something and say, yeah, I think I can knock that out today. So let's just do it. And so I'll start working on it and I'll do it. So, but it probably could be way more structured than it is, and I might be better off that way. But for now, that's kind of where I'm at.
You're a solo developer, like the only person, which is not something that I have done much of ever. Always like been kind of part of a team, at least as far back as I can recall, for anything that mattered. And so it's for you, it's all you. Nobody else is collaborating on these code bases or like checking your commits and reviewing your PRs and anything. That must be interesting. And I'm curious, like, how you feel about maybe what you appreciate, what's super cool about just like it's all me, and also maybe anything that you kind of feel is lacking or missing from this because it's just you.
Yeah. So I mean, I love the freedom that it gives me to kind of be able to pick and choose what I want to work on and not necessarily be, uh, tied into anyone else's schedule or anything like that. But at the same time, it is, like you said, it is all me. And so any of the mistakes that are made are all me. Any of the great stuff that is done is all me, but the mistakes are what people tend to focus on. And so that's a scary thing, and maybe I'm having a bad day and I didn't check something that I should have, and then I decide to release some of the code, and then it causes issues. I try to not push things out too soon. Like I try to break things on my own like local development setup, so that way it doesn't break things on a customer site. So that way I can address those issues before they become issues. So it's a little bit scary that I might miss something. And it would be great to have another set of eyes looking over some of my stuff and just kind of giving feedback. Hey, you did it this way, but it could also be done that way. And maybe it would be a little bit better or whatever. Or, hey, you completely messed this up and this is not going to work at all. And change it, kind of thing. And so, that kind of collaborative effort, I think would benefit me and the work that I do. And so, ultimately that's what I'm aiming for is to have that sort of team approach, even if it's just one extra person, to kind of look over stuff. But ultimately I'd like to have a slightly larger team than just me and someone else. Definitely more than just me.
Sure. I can imagine that that would be appreciated. You've given some pretty cool presentations, and there's one that I was hearing a little bit about recently that you gave. I think it was at LoopConf. Is that right?
Yeah.
What'd you talk about there?
Yeah. So at LoopConf, I talked about, what was the title of it? It was a soldier's perspective on mental health issues, or something along those lines.
Right. People were talking about this.
Yeah. So I was noticing a lot lately in the developer community that people are dealing with certain mental health issues, whether it's burnout or other issues that they were dealing with. And I said to myself, like, I can draw a lot of correlation between what they're experiencing and what I experienced as a soldier, especially when I was deployed to Afghanistan. And so I said, I think I might have a somewhat unique perspective on some of this stuff, and it might help some people. Might not help anybody. Hopefully, it helps at least one. But I said, let me give it a shot and see if I can, put some of that information out there and hopefully help some people. And so I got a lot of good feedback from it. It's out there on YouTube. I think if LoopConf has a YouTube channel, so if anyone's having any kind of mental health issues, there is that video out there. I'm not a psychologist or counselor or therapist or anything like that, so don't take any of what I say as the end all solution to whatever issues you might be experiencing. But it kind of talks about how I work through some of the issues that I experienced. Talked about how I lost my brother in Afghanistan. He was killed in action. So I talked about how that ultimately led to a significant degree of burnout on my end, and what I ended up doing to kind of work through some of the issues that I was experiencing with that.
Wow. Those sound like pretty powerful lessons and stuff to, it's no wonder that I think that it resonated with people who saw the talk. And I encourage everybody to check it out on YouTube. I'll be doing the same as well. It sounds like, that sounds like heavy stuff for us, especially folks like us who probably all too often take for granted the luxury we have. And so often I feel like, gosh, we've got it so good. We're so lucky. This is too easy. What do we got to complain about? And then, and then the next day, like, this is hard. I don't care what you say. This is actually not that easy. So I don't know. Balancing what we've got is tricky, but just drawing from those lessons that you've had in other industry just sounds really valuable for that perspective. I think. I don't know.
I think it's helped me as in my current position. The work that I do now, it helped me to kind of realize I don't have to sweat the small stuff. Like, roll with the punches. Things aren't going to be that bad. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, and if those issues are still here, they're still here, and I'll deal with it. And so I'm not feeling like I'm forced to work till 3 o'clock in the morning every day just to, fix an issue that might be out there. Because I know if I'm working those kind of long, crazy hours, I'm not working at my peak performance. And so I'm probably going to screw more things up than it's worth. And so I learned to read my own signs and know when I'm getting overstressed and overworked, and know when to step away, and know when to, call it, I don't want to say call it quits, but, just kind of walk away from things and come back with a fresh perspective. And I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting here later in the day struggling with something that just wasn't working. Maybe some of the code just wasn't working the way I thought it should have. And then finally I just said, I'm going to wrap it up for today. I'll come check it out tomorrow. And within the first 15 minutes of the next morning, I had figured it out, just because I came back with a fresh perspective. And so I think that's something that a lot of times people feel like the need to prove themselves, maybe with overworking and, I work till 3 o'clock in the morning and, all this kind of stuff. And like, it doesn't necessarily equal better outcome, with that. So I feel like a lot of my background has helped me to learn to read my own signs and know when I've had enough, and to kind of walk away.
Yeah. So your time a little bit, you think, in the military helped you with that level of self-awareness, or have you always been pretty self-aware?
I think my time, kind of my time in the military and my time after being in the military, with myself and kind of understand my own issues and stuff like that. So when I've had too much, when I've had too much stress or too much, whatever, I kind of sense it. I notice that I start acting a little bit differently, and I know when to say, okay, you know what, let's stop, let's step away, and let's focus on something else for now, to kind of clear my mind and do do something different, so that way I can come back with a fresh outlook, a fresh perspective on whatever the issue is. So
Sure. You're down there in Phoenix?
Yeah, I'm in a city called Surprise. There's no punchline. Like, that's actually the name of the city is Surprise. It's northwest of Phoenix, about half-hour drive or so northwest of Phoenix.
Gotcha. There's quite the community down there in that valley. You get involved very much?
Yeah, there's a meetup that's kind of sort of near my house, about a half hour away from my house. Actually, tomorrow night is the meetup that has usually 30-ish people who show up. It's just kind of a side room at a coffee shop, and we talk WordPress stuff, marketing related topics and stuff. But there's other WordPress meetups that take place around the Phoenix Valley area. Some of them are kind of on the opposite side of Phoenix from me, and they're quite a ways away, so I don't make it out to those as much as I'd like to. But there's a big community. We just had our WordCamp in Phoenix back, I think it was in February, and there was, I think, about 600 people or so that showed up. It was a pretty decent sized WordCamp that happened then. Yeah, it's a great community out here.
Wow, yeah, that's fantastic. Have you been? How long have you been down there in that area?
About 4.5 years now.
Okay.
I'm originally from Connecticut, and we moved out. About 4.5 years or so now. And my wife and I grew up in Connecticut in the Northeast, and before one winter, we just said, you know what? I don't think we can go through another winter with all the snow and all the cold. We hated it. We hated the cold. We hated the snow. And so we're like, let's find someplace warmer to live. And I don't think it gets much warmer than here. So I think we did that.
Yeah. Surprise.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what's some of the things you guys, you and your wife, like to do, like in your spare time?
Yeah, I mean, we have 3 young kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and so they take up a considerable amount of our free time. My wife runs a local blog that talks about stuff to do with kids around the Phoenix area, and so she's always taking the kids out to all these new places and stuff like that. And so they're always out and about trying to find new things to do for my wife to write about. She takes pictures and videos and stuff like that of all these cool places for kids. And so, we tag along, we go check out all these things. She gets into all these cool events and stuff like that. So, hanging out with our kids is stuff that I love doing. And I think we have about 350 sunny days around here, so we don't really have to worry about the weather being an issue. So we always are outside doing stuff, or there might going to my son's baseball games, or just going out for a hike around the area. We're always doing stuff like that. So so basically hanging out with the kids is where our stage of life right now.
Yeah. That's a good stage. What could be better? What could be better than that? I don't know. What's like on your calendar, Scott? Where are people going to bump into you in the future and like this year?
Yeah, I ended last year. So prior to last year, I hadn't really traveled much for this type of work, and I think we met at Pressnomics last year.
Yeah, that's right.
That was like one of the first kind of bigger conferences that I had been to, and so I realized with all the connections that I made there that if I want to meet people and build relationships with people, I can't just stay home. I can't sit behind my computer all day and expect these relationships to just blossom and whatever. So last year, kind of the second half of last year, I started doing a whole lot more traveling than I was used to, and I started to, towards the end, I was just like, all right, I had enough. I don't want to do any more traveling. I don't want to schedule any. Not that I was completely opposed to it. It was too much at once, and I think I was just trying to cram in as much as I could. in a short time period, and that I think was starting to weigh on me and burn me out a little bit. So I went to LoopConf back in February, and that was the only thing I had on my schedule for, and WordCamp Phoenix. But it was like the only two things that I had on my schedule at the beginning of this year that I knew I would be going to. And so just recently, I started applying to other WordCamps, realizing that I need to get back on this. I took a break. It took a couple months where I can kind of just hang out at home and not be living in airports or anything like that. But I need to get back out there. So I started applying to a few WordCamps. So I don't have anything definitive right now. I kind of waiting to see what WordCamps I might get accepted at for speaking at. I may go to some, even if I'm not accepted as a speaker. I just want to kind of have a better idea of where I'm going to absolutely have to be if I get accepted,
Right.
as opposed to, where's the nice to be kind of place. So
It's funny.
They're all nice to go to, but
They are. It's always a treat. And as you describe your ebbs and flow of traveling, that's like actually a surprisingly common theme that I've heard from a lot of people going through this. And it makes me wonder, like, why is this? Like, why do so many of us have this problem where we do like these waves of like too much and then none at all and then way too much and then
well, and I think
I'm burned out and sick of it.
If you look at our typical workflow too, if you're like a workaholic, you're gonna go for 16 hours a day, and you're gonna have that wave of doing too much, and then the next day you might be working the next day, but you're not really doing a whole lot because your mind is not there. It's just not going to be 100% there. And so I feel like maybe I've taken that mindset and applied it to some of the travel that I was doing, and part of it was also that some of these WordCamps that I was going to, they just happened to be very close to each other, and so time wise, they weren't spaced out very much, and so I didn't want to travel too far. So like last year I went to Salt Lake City and Las Vegas, which are all pretty close to where I am. So I didn't want to get too far. And so I kind of was limited to, a handful of different WordCamps that were in that geographic area or whatever. So, but now I'm kind of broadening my horizons and not being worried too much about the geographic distance that I might have to travel to, and just kind of looking at spreading them out a little bit more. So I'm not doing, one after the other, week after week after week. I'm kind of spacing it out a little bit more, and maybe I'll have to travel a little bit further, but I won't have to do it the very next week. Like I'm not going to come home, unpack, and then repack, and then go again, kind of thing.
Oh man. All right. Well, I totally understand that. Sometimes I wish I had more influence over spacing them out myself, because I haven't been to hardly anything in the past 3 or 4 months. And now I'm about to attend 5 conferences in the next 65 days. It's plus a wedding and a bachelor party and just a road trip and everything else. It's going to be a ridiculous season. But I don't know. That's just how it lands sometimes. And I got to support my local WordCamps here. We have a high density of them in the Great Lakes area, actually.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, there's quite a few, and not too big of a geographic distance, around.
Yeah,
it seems like you guys have a good community up there.
I'm very fond of our community. I think we're quite fortunate, and here in Michigan, it's just fantastic. We have 4 WordCamps here, and Ohio has 4. I can drive to like very easily to probably 10 plus WordCamps a year, more if I want to extend to like driving most of a day, but like 3 to 4 hours, that's 10 camps a year if I want to. So everybody out west doesn't really have that same privilege, I guess.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
like Las Vegas was about a 4.5 hour drive for me, so that wasn't too bad. We did drive to Salt Lake City last year for WordCamp Salt Lake City. We ended up staying overnight on the drive. It was a place my wife had always wanted to go to just to check out, and so we all we took our kids and everything, and we all drove up there just to kind of make a weekend trip out of it. But yeah, there's not other than maybe California. There's not a whole lot else that is within driving distance from where I am.
Right.
There's just a whole lot of nothing in between big cities. So.
Yeah, it's so there's a lot to be said for some of the cool places out west, at least coming from me in the Midwest here. But like I can drive to so much stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't get on a plane for much of anything in Chicago or Toronto or Cincinnati or wherever I want to go. Anyway, Scott, it's been fun. I've got like my last question, I think, is just to the names of anybody that you really recommend I get on the show in the future.
Yeah. Probably. I was thinking about this question because I know you've asked this in the past to other people, but
You are in like the 1% of guests who actually see that question coming.
So I took a look at your prior guests, and a lot of that was like the people I know is like people you've already spoken to, and I was like, well, this isn't going to be very helpful. But
this gets harder. Like I've been doing this for years, so you got it a lot harder than people did several years ago.
Well, I know. Yeah, if I was like guest number one, then it would just be like, okay, yeah, I'll just throw anybody out there, and they're going to be fine. But so a couple people came to mind. You had Tara Clays on a couple weeks ago, and she does a podcast, Hallway Chats, with Liam Dempsey.
Right.
He's a cool guy. I met him in person. I was on their podcast last year, and I met him in person at WordCamp US this past year. He's a cool guy, though. That he would be cool to have on, and also. Sam Brody is another person who probably
Sam.
be good to have on as well. He just started a thing called Offsprout, and that's pretty cool. And he's been kind of out there in the WordPress world for a little bit too, so he might be cool to have on as well.
Those are great suggestions, Scott. Thank you. I think we'll wrap up. I'll let you get on with your day. You should have 1 more hour in your work day.
Probably 2 more hours. Yeah.
Probably 2. I'm about to go have some dinner.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna let you go and do that before you start getting angry at me and getting all hungry and everything.
It's not me so much. My wife's setting the table right now, so I gotta go. And report for duty, basically.
Yeah.
Scott, thanks so much for your time, sharing all the
thanks,
information about you, your business. It's been really cool getting to know you a little bit better, and I look forward to bumping into you in person before too long.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.